So our next and our featured speaker, I guess, tonight is Bob Hall. Bob Hall, for 50 years, more actually, Bob Hall has been North Carolina's foremost advocate for the idea that government should be for the people, all the people, and not for the corporations and the wealthy. He's never been in it for the awards, but the awards have come to him anyway from all the right places. He's won a MacArthur Fellows Genius Award. He won the North Carolina Press Association's First Amendment Award. He won the North Carolina NAACP's Political Trailblazer Award. He won the North Carolina ACLU's Frank Porter Graham Award, and he is a winner of the Governor's Order of the Longleaf Pine. In the 60s, Bob was the founding editor of Southern Exposure, a hard-hitting journal of the Institute for Southern Studies, which for years has shone a light on labor issues, environmental issues, and issues of racial injustice. In the 1990s, he co-founded a new organization which became Democracy North Carolina and headed it until 2018. Democracy North Carolina got us such major campaign reforms as the nation's first public financing program for judicial elections, same-day registration and voting, expanded early voting in North Carolina, including Sunday souls to the polls, a pre-registration for teenagers to vote when they become of age, a host of these changes that elevated North Carolina from the bottom 12 states in the country for voter participation in the 20th century. We are now in the top 12 states in the 21st century. And Bob has also fearlessly written reports and filed complaints leading to fines and criminal charges against Democratic and Republican politicians and donors, from Mike Easley to Phil Berger. Bob Hall is a hero of mine, frankly, somebody I've followed for years. He is a tenacious researcher who sticks to the facts and doesn't try to embellish them or distort them. That's why the politicos who don't like him and would rather ignore him simply cannot. And the second thing about Bob is it's never about him. His work is always about making democracy real. It's about we the people. It's an honor to welcome Bob Hall.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invitation to join you tonight. And I learned a lot. I really did. This is a powerful program. You all have done a great service to document what has been going on in Raleigh. And I'm honored to be here. I agreed to really just make a few comments based on my own observations about the election postponement, because I was involved with a number of other nonprofit groups in watching what was going to happen with the census delay. What were these cities going to do that have district-based elections? What were the decisions that they would make, and how would they make them? Some cities actually wanted to try to squeeze in an election in 2021, thinking that they could take the census information, which was released in August, the middle of August, and get it all done in time to have an election in November. That was pretty unrealistic. Some cities were listening to the advice of a lawyer at the School of Government who was saying, well, you should just wait for the General Assembly. But that's not an advice of what a city government that needs to hear from their citizens, that needs to engage their citizens, should take. You don't sit back and wait for someone else who has higher powers to just tell you what they think is best for you. I think you all have made the point, the powerful point, that under the kind of government, a city management, city council form of government, a primary role of the city council is to bring forward the opinions of the people into the debate, into the policy debate. because you've got a manager who's running the day-to-day business, who's hiring the personnel. The city council, they're the board of directors. They're making the policies. They need to be listening to the stakeholders. That's the citizens. They need to be actively out there with an outreach campaign, always. And the CACs were a prime example of how that could be done, was being done. And to get rid of it, as you've shown, is just an atrocity. That's a terrible, terrible regression. Other cities, I will tell you, when they were faced with the dilemma of what to do with the fact that the census information was going to be delayed, they held public meetings. Citizens came to there, and I know this happened in Raleigh as well. Citizens came to the city council and asked the city council, what are you going to do? And the city council would kind of slough it off and say, well, we're waiting for the General Assembly. The General Assembly was saying, we're waiting for the cities to tell us what to do. A number of cities passed resolutions. They held meetings. They listened to the citizens about what they should do. They passed resolutions asking their delegation in the General Assembly to delay the election till the spring, to provide some other mechanism of postponement, to provide a better framework for them, to give them a new pathway for what to do. But Raleigh didn't do any of that out in the open. And that's what's so galling and really just terrible, terrible practice, that they would wait and do in a secret meeting, in a secret process, and use the delay of the census as an excuse. You know, Charlotte they're not delaying their election. They're having a March election. Greensboro, these are big cities. They're not doing this. They're going to use the information. They're going to be able to redistrict. So it's just a cop-out, an excuse that they have come up with. And even then, when they were making this decision in a work group or some kind, they should have come back and had a public hearing, had a public meeting, let the public talk about, give feedback on their recommendation, whatever their recommendation is going to be, and find out whether people wanted to maintain the runoff, whether they wanted to go to even year elections. There's pros and cons to that, whether they wanted to postpone from March or go on. The Charlotte election does have the provision that they have a primary in March and a runoff because they're a partisan election. So they have to have a primary in March, and they can have a runoff in April, later in the spring. Now, Raleigh could have done this. They could have had the general election in March and had a runoff later in the spring when the congressional runoffs and so on will be held. So there are better systems out there. It was just a con job to say that they had to postpone the election in the manner that they did. And the way it was done in the General Assembly was also terrible, and it should not have been done. It has nothing to do with the way democratic practice should be. Respect is at the core of democracy. To not respect your citizens enough to bring them in and ask them and talk to them about such a major policy decision is deplorable. That's really my comment